There are two kinds of people in this world. The people who fail to do what they know they should, and those who keep doing things they know they shouldn't. Guess what? You're both. Hi, I'm your host, life and business coach, Marcy Barker, aka your loving kick in the pants. In this podcast, I'll teach you the 6 steps of my accountability code that will help you wake up with clarity and show up with aligned action steps that make follow through easy and peaceful. All right, let's jump in. Hello, my beautiful people. I am here with my new friend, Shaylee, and I am so excited to dive into her topic today because when she applied to be on my podcast, it was like my jaw dropped when I read what she wanted to talk about. And it fits in perfectly to what we talk about here at the Accountability Code and your loving kick in the pants. So, Shaylee, welcome. Thank you for being on my podcast. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, your stage of life.
All right. Yeah, I'm Shaylee. I'm born and raised from Utah. I'm a mom of 3. I have a 10, 7, and 3-year-old. So it's crazy. My life is wild.
And you have purple hair for people who are not watching, just listening. Purple hair. Do you always have colors in your hair?
Just purple usually. The last probably like year or two, I finally was like, you know what, that's me.
I like that. Yep, and you heard about the podcast through a Facebook group and a friend, is that right?
Yes. I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last 5 years with a small business. I love crystals. My business is called The Burnt Crystal. I make crystal jewelry. So yeah, that's where I'm at in life right now.
Nice. I have a handful of crystals. Well, listeners will know I'm not super hippie, but I have a lot of hippie friends, and I say that in the nicest way possible. But I always am like, oh, I have these random things here. But I like to see what they mean and see if they mean anything at all. I think if you think it's silly, it's going to be silly. But if you want to put intention into something, then it will happen. So anyway, do you have any crystals on you right now, or did you pick one up for the day, or?
I actually don't, but I usually have labradorite on me. That's a favorite of mine. It's so pretty.
And what's that for?
It's a grounding crystal, intuition. I have a really hard time trusting myself in anything, any decision I make. So I tend to have that one on to know that I know what's best for myself.
I love that. Okay, let's dive right in because I'm just going to say it. When Shaylee put her application in, she witnessed her father murder her mother at 11 years old. And the core message she wanted to share was healing can be found no matter what trauma you've been through. And that is really, really powerful. So I'm excited to get into that because listeners, if you know me or you've read my book or you have my audiobook, you guys know that I have had issues with my dad. And unfortunately, they're still not solved or resolved. And there's a lot of wishing that things would be different, but there's also a lot of healing that goes on too. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And Shaylee, go ahead, tell us the story.
Yeah, they had been divorced for a couple of months. My dad's an alcoholic. He was abusive through the whole relationship. My mom was actually doing really good. She was in college. She had a relationship. They probably would have got married, and my dad didn't like that. So yeah, it was November 29th of 2001. My brother had gone to school, but my mom was inside just getting ready. And I was actually outside making a snowman because it was snowing. My dad pulled up and he got out of the truck and just kind of walked past me and was like, "Where's your mom?" And I was like, "Inside getting ready." Like, I was daddy's little princess, and so I always loved seeing him. So I was like, "Hey, Dad," But then, yeah, he goes in and I stayed outside while I was doing the snowman, and I heard yelling. So I go in to see what's going on, and he was yelling at her, trying to get her to leave with him to go get in the truck, but she wouldn't. So she's in the bathroom getting ready, and then across the hall there's our bedroom because we lived with my grandma at the time. So I go in, he's yelling at her, and then so I kind of try and break it up, and he actually grabs me by the hair and throws me on the bed right there in the room. And my mom told me to run after that. So I run outside, and I run around to the neighbors. There's just a fence right there. So I run around, and my dad's following me. And so I stop at the neighbor's door, and he goes to like jump over the fence, but stops. And then he goes and walks to the truck to grab the shotgun. And he walks up. I'm still at the neighbors at their door. And so he goes up to the door and shoots, I forget, I think like 2 times. And then the door opens and he shoots another time. And then he just runs back to the truck and takes off. So then I walk back around and walk up to the door is open, and my mom is laying there on the ground. He had shot her leg. So this is like one of my like flashbacks that I always kind of so because it was so cold, he had shot her leg, and I could see like the bone and flesh, and it was actually like steaming because it was so cold. So I walk in the rest of the way, and she's laying down, and the phone actually rings. And I couldn't hear the phone that was like on that side of the house, so I just walked to the other side. I don't know why. I was like, oh, let me go answer the phone. But it was actually dispatch. My mom had been on the phone with the police.
Mm.
So I answer, and they're like, what happened? And I was like, I think I remember saying like, my dad shot my mom. I was like, she's gonna die. And they're, I don't remember, much of the conversation after that. But so then the ambulance gets there, and I just remember like just waiting outside, like I didn't know what to do. So then gets like fuzzy after that, like pretty clearly remember all of the event, but then I remember getting to the hospital. My aunt and uncle came and got me, and then we had to go get my brother, which was only like a block away. So after it happened, all the schools in the area had to go on lockdown.
Oh, wow. Because your dad was on the run, so to speak.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So it was actually hard to get my brother out because they were like, we're on lockdown. And we were like, well, we need him. We need to go to the hospital with him. So, and then yeah, I remember getting to the hospital. I had to be interviewed by a police officer. And then I don't know how much long after, but I so clearly remember me and my brother were like sitting on a hospital bed, and the doctor walking down the hallway to let us know that she didn't make it.
Wow. Oh, thank you for sharing. That is a lot to just hear,
Yeah.
but to know that things like this do happen, and you popped up out of nowhere to say, hey, we can heal after all of this trauma. So give us a little bit of background of what that looked like. There obviously are going to be dark days, dark years, dark times from dealing with that. But yeah, walk us through kind of the timeline of how you got to where you are today.
I even remember from the beginning, like everybody was terrified of my reaction, of course. They would whisper behind my back, and I always remember being like, please don't treat me like this, that I'm flower. And I was like, I was there. I was always very independent.
Do you think it's because they didn't know what to say?
Yeah, definitely. Like, how do you comfort someone that went through that and
Yeah.
don't want to say the wrong thing? Or so yeah. But yeah, I was always like that. So then my aunt and uncle actually got custody of me and my brother. So we lived with them, which I always look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was 11 and my brother was 12. So they're getting two traumatized preteens. Like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. But so yeah, we went to live with them, and typical teenage stuff. I was getting into trouble. My brother was getting into trouble. He actually went to, it's like a youth like rehab program for quite a few years. So I probably like when I want to say like 15. So then I lost my brother for a long time.
Hey listeners, the message of waking up and showing up is yours for the taking. In fact, it's free. I've recorded my entire audiobook and I'd love for you to consume it between episodes. Head to marcybarker.com to get instant access to the accountability code Wake Up and Show Up. All right, let's jump back in.
So yeah, just like the typical, I was getting in trouble, smoking pot. I actually went to the same kind of program because I stole my uncle's pills. And so definitely no healing going through that time, just self-medicating. And
Was your aunt and uncle on your mom's side or your dad's side?
my mom's side.
Okay, so how did that impact kind of the narrative? Because you went from being a daddy's little princess. Were you ever afraid of your dad before this happened, or was this a complete change in how you viewed him and maybe how your aunt and uncle spoke about the situation?
Yeah, I was told a lot of stories of, what my dad did and that he was a monster. And I tend to resent that a little. I think that, I was a kid. I viewed my dad how he was to me. So they were trying to, like
Change the
manipulate.
picture. Yeah,
Yeah.
manipulate is a good word. I can relate in the fact of, I got married at 18 years old. And when I was engaged, a lot of people said, this is how it's going to be. This is how it's going to be. This is how it's going to be. And I was like, can't you let me have my own story or my own experiences? And I'm glad that you recognize that it can be different and we don't have to adopt those things. Actually, part of healing is releasing those things that didn't actually serve us. When would you say your first turning point of healing began? And in the podcast, we reference this as a wake up and show up moment. What was one of your first times that you had this thought or feeling that's like, it's got to be different?
Probably. So my dad couldn't contact us until we were 18. So probably when, I started talking to him, because I was like, everything's fine. It's fine. But when I started talking to him, it was terrifying. So I've been with my husband since I was 16. So, he kind of got to witness that first starting to talk to him. And he was like, I immediately broke down in tears and just whole body shaking. And so I think I guess maybe in denial, but no, everything's fine. It's fine. I think like that was the turning point of like, oh, I really do need to face this stuff and actually work through it. And so when I started talking to him.
How was that first encounter with your dad? Was it, I imagine, or I would guess that he, 7 years from the time it happened till the time you turned 18, that you would hope he'd have a very softened heart of, contemplating, I haven't seen my children for this many years. What was that like? Was it like you expected? Did you not know what to expect? Did you prepare to go into it a certain way?
No, I didn't really prepare. I think it wasn't as expected as I had hoped. When he went to trial, he tried to get off on an insanity plea because he was so drunk and that like he didn't remember any of it. And so I just felt like that wasn't accountability. He was like, oh, it wasn't me that did it.
Oh, wow.
So he was kind of still in that mindset of, that he didn't really remember it. And so the boyfriend that my mom was with, she had actually been having an affair with him for like a year prior to them getting divorced.
Oh, wow.
So he used that a lot as why
Just
it happened, that hurt from that. Yeah, the justifying the. So it was still like that. So that was kind of, I guess I didn't expect that. And that was frustrating.
yeah. In your application, you also said that you have a relationship with your dad now
I
and
do.
you could be completely healed. And I loved reading that because it just gives me a sense of hope of, things can happen and healing is possible, like 100% possible. And when I have experiences with my dad, I constantly have to determine if I am in a place to address it or if I have to be like, oh no, this is just like all the other times. And
Mhm.
and I have hope that he can be healed, but I don't believe it's by my interactions that he'll be healed.
Yeah.
With your dad, what do you think made the difference for him turning around and for you as well to accept that or to act on hope?
I think it was me giving him that possibility of that relationship and that expectation of what I expect and boundaries. And he would say things and I'd be like, no. So he's like, all right, I gotta change that. Or so yeah, I would say that his hope that he could have a relationship with me.
Yeah. I'm a little scared to ask, but what would you say for somebody in my position that my doors aren't necessarily closed to my dad? Um, every time he tries to interact with me, I'm very clear about if you do the healing, if you respect us, if you change the way you communicate, then things can happen. And then, of course, you don't hear from him for a long time until he
Yeah.
needs something. So I guess, yeah, what would you say in my situation? What do you think is something that I could benefit from knowing you are on the other side?
Yeah.
You're part of a relationship that is going in the right direction instead of mine seems to be going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's so hard because I seen change in my dad at some point.
Mm.
And I think it's really about that, like through their healing, if they've learned to respect boundaries and to validate our emotions and our feelings. And so honestly, like if your dad can't do that, I think that it's okay that you wouldn't have a relationship with him.
Mm. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because there's no validation going on.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
and there's 8 kids in my family, and he's not validating any of them. So that's a good indicator. So thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
With your relationship with your dad now, are there things that still pop up or you're like, we worked through that, we can move on? Because in my mind, there's 2 parts. There's one of you're forgiving somebody who did something horribly wrong, but he also took your mother from you.
Yes.
So how do you handle that when things might pop up?
I think just like clear communication and honesty. I ask him the hard questions when I first decided, okay, like I really want to have a closer relationship. I don't want it to just be kind of surface level where we were just like writing letters here and there. And I asked him the hard questions of like, do you remember it now? I want you to tell me how you remember it, or like what was your biggest regret? Just like a few of that. So like I ask him these hard questions and he gets to answer them and he gets to, and I hope that there's honesty, which I feel like there is. So yeah, I ask him the hard questions. There's no he doesn't get just a free pass of he gets to answer those hard ones.
Yes. I love that. It's the same. I mean, me being an accountability coach, one of the last things I did tell my dad was I love you and I'm here for you when things start to change, but it doesn't mean you're free from accountability. And I think that's really true. So this is a really great conversation for me
Yeah.
too. So what's next, would you say? Or why is this message so important for you to share with the world that healing can happen after trauma?
I think because I actually just got the call Tuesday. So he just had a parole hearing, I want to say the 11th. So the Tuesday before that, and I just got the call that he got a parole date, so that he's getting out.
Mm.
So I think, you know what I mean? Like I can't like avoid this relationship, or, you know, my kids talk to him, and, you know, he's grandpa to them. And I'm very open with my kids too. They know that what he did, some of the other bad things that he has done. I want them to be able to choose a relationship with him too.
Mm.
If they don't feel like he's a safe person, or then that's okay, that they don't have to just because I want one.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. How did you become like that? I feel like that's so wise, that's so top level. You're taking the high road. How did you get there? Or is it a part of you? I mean, because you do seem like a very peaceful, relaxing, calm person, opposite of me.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yes,
how did you, yeah, how did you get there? Who in your life has helped you? What are some of those key things that really helped you heal?
oh my gosh. Probably my husband. Like I said, we've been together since we were 16. We're 32 now. So, and he's just amazing and supportive, and just lets me be me and make my decisions and work through things. So, with my dad too, it's like it's my dad, and I have that like a hope and excitement of he's my dad. I get my dad back. He's
Mm-hmm.
had to kind of pump the brakes and be like, no, and you can't just jump into a relationship and just like, if when my dad gets out, start going camping and running around, and he's like, no, we need to have some boundaries there. And
Mm,
uh,
good.
yeah,
Sounds like
he's a
a
great
good man.
no, I'm
Um,
actually like extremely anxiety filled, and
uh,
I gotta
he grounds you.
yeah, uh-huh.
Um, and what about, did you do therapy? Did you do any programs? And what led you to your journey of healing? You know, because everybody that I know that loves rocks and crystals, healing is a staple for them. It's a theme in their life.
Oh,
How did you
definitely.
get there?
Yeah, so I did a little bit of therapy when I was a kid, and then like me and my brother would not talk, so they were like, you'll just have to come back when they're actually ready to process and talk.
Mm,
Honestly, I wouldn't say it's from the therapy and the, you know what I mean? Like I have a little bit of that, but then it was really probably when I was like 17 or 18, and I started diving into like Wiccan and crystals, and that I really started to heal and find myself, and just the inner work, you know, the shadow work, the inner child, so I would say, yeah, was when I started getting into crystals and that kind of spirituality, and that because I grew up LDS.
mm,
Um, I left about then as a teenager, when I was like, that's always called to me when I was like a little girl, and you see like the first star and you're like, I wish I may, I wish I might. It's
uh,
like, I wish I was a witch. I was like, I didn't even know you could actually be one.
that's cute. That's cute.
So yeah. Yep.
Um,
Crystals.
so what would you recommend if somebody's listening to this right now and they feel like they're in the midst of it, maybe still learning how to process their trauma, maybe even learning how to define it or speak about it? What would you say is a good thing that you might suggest for them?
Um, Probably journaling, just
Mm,
like raw, honest, just writing it out. It's okay to feel how you're feeling, and just, yeah, getting it out, journaling, the inner child work. That was hard for me, the inner child work.
mm.
But
Yeah, especially having something very defining and traumatic,
yeah,
because if you would have asked me a couple years ago if I had any trauma, I'd be like, no, everything's fine. Like my childhood was great. But
yeah.
when I start to process it, I actually have a little picture right here. Viewers, you can't see it, but it's a picture of me when I was I don't know, 8 or 9. And I have a whole half of an orange in my mouth. And I look at this and I'm like, this girl was amazing,
Mhm.
but my parents weren't around to tell me that or to see it. I mean, I got lost in the shuffle a lot. And I also think it's funny that my mouth is unable to speak. Or even my spirit animal is a monkey, and I totally
Oh,
look like a monkey that just found the jackpot.
yeah.
I think that's really powerful to recognize how you were as a child and how that impacts how you show up today, because this this is innocence. This is complete God-like and spiritual. And so I think that's really powerful. What do you think is an aspect that has helped you now that is a God-given attribute from childhood?
I think probably compassion.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because I definitely didn't like run around telling everybody what I had gone through. So I think everybody's trauma is valid.
Hmm.
And I didn't like to tell people because then it was like, oh, we have to treat Shaylee different. Or I had a bigger, more traumatic story. So I had more trauma in a way. And I think that everybody, if you feel like you had something, you had trauma, then it's just as valid as mine.
That's such an important message. I love that. I made a post about that a while ago about, if you have 10 pounds to lose, you can feel the same way as somebody who has 100 pounds to lose. That you don't get to complain more, or you don't get to brag more, or you're not better than anybody else because your struggles are different. So thank you for sharing that. To end, is there one specific message that you want people to know? If they're like, oh, I listened to Shaylee's episode and this is what I learned, what's that one thing that you would hope people would take away from your message today?
Probably find yourself, find your feelings and your emotions are valid.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
I love that. We all need a good reminder of that. I want everybody to just take a deep breath. Say, my emotions are valid. And my affirmations come through like, don't tell me what to do. My emotions are valid. Like, that's how my affirmations come through. But it might be very calm if you're more like Shaylee of my emotions are valid. Anyway, but thank you so much for your message and for your time, and most importantly for your example. Not just to me, but I know that there's a lot of people who walk around with very heavy burdens and very tired shoulders from figuring out how to process all of the healing. But you are living proof that it can be done, and it is done safely. It's done by doing the work. It's done by journaling, paying attention to your emotions, having a sounding board or a grounding partner. It's all very important. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week for another episode of Your Loving Kick in the Pants. Hey friends, I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Your Loving Kick in the Pants. If you got any value out of this episode, I would love for you to drop me a review or share with a friend what you learned. All right, I'll see you next Wednesday for Your Loving Kick in the Pants.